scans detect a functioning uplink targeting module, 428 meters northeast. My analysis indicates a throw is our only option here. I can throw you across the gap.
Are you sure about this?
There is a 68% chance of success.
What about the other 32%?
There is a 32% chance of an incomplete traverse. Wind, 3 knots, heading 274. Range, 95 meters. Projectile mass, 89 kilograms. Trust me.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Bite Marks.
Yo.
And yeah, I was very much tempted to start this episode by singing the theme song of Megas XLR.
We do love giant robots. And as far as I know, chicks dig giant robots.
I think the jury's out on that one. I think Megas technically really only has one female character in it.
Isn't that wild?
Is recurrent. It's, well, to be fair, it only has like 4 or 5 characters that are really recurrent.
And no, it has if you count the bad guy, I think it has like 6 or 7 characters, maybe 8 that are recurrent, like counting the bad guy and his 2 lackeys, and like 2 women.
Yeah, I think the most amazing thing about the Megas show is that they somehow were able to make a Monster of the Week Mech show that had very little serialization right up until like the very end, where everything just kind of, coalesces into like this big anime ball of of stuff.
What I find amazing is that somehow this fucking yokel from wherever the hell he's from managed to attach a car to the top of a robot and program an advanced alien robot to work with like a game console controller. How did he do this? Is Coop like an electrical engineering genius?
He's just built different, Callum. And if we're
beta
going
males
off
out here.
If we're just going, the beta max male.
Coop is a sigma male.
He totally is. He totally was before, Anyway, so if we're going off on a completely unrelated tangent, it's because we're talking about mechs today.
Yeah, that was the last. We tried to record this video like a week ago, and the internet killed us. And that was the exact joke we opened on, but with a different example.
Oh yeah, Bite Marks, recycling jokes for a better tomorrow.
Pretty sure this is how we opened the Cyberpunk video too. Maybe this is just our catchphrase now. If we're going off on a tangent, we're talking about this subject.
The people want continuity, and the people also want mechs. But which kind of mechs? Well, I really like Titanfall. Specifically, I really like Titanfall 2. I think in terms of FPS games, it's probably one of the best FPS games that I've played in quite a while.
I have problems with it.
But Callum has problems with it.
Well, I just like, I played it for this video, and my reviewing brain started. I have literally a page of notes, and I read through them the other day, and I realized only 2 or 3 of them are actual notes for the video, and most of them are like, this is bad game design. There are 2 fetch quests, 2 identical fetch quests in the first area, and the only difference between them is narration.
Oh boy. If you want some Titanfall hot takes, please continue watching the video.
Your favorite game is bad.
There is a deeper question that we wanted to explore. Because Callum and I have been doing some serious topics. Bite Marks has been covering some serious subject matter, and we have more of that coming in the future. But we wanted to do something a little bit less depressing. And we thought we would talk about something that I find to be personally interesting, and that is whether or not Titanfall 2 is a Western or Eastern mech game. Shocker, I know, it's a burning question that's on everyone's minds. So,
I would
Callum,
like to preface this by saying we understand that there are probably qualities of both, and there definitely are. I mean, there's a mech in Titanfall called the Ronin, which is like a samurai kind of design, and we understand that there's going to be qualities of both, but we're just saying like which side it's leaning more to.
I think I think what we're going to try to do, because I am very much more familiar with the Western sort of mech school of thought, and Callum is more familiar with anime, so he knows more about the Eastern mech philosophy.
I'm the cool one, clearly.
What we're going to try to do is, I think, tease out what really makes for a Western or Eastern mech game, and talk about how it applies to Titanfall. And hopefully that'll be a good episode. And along the way, we will definitely be I will definitely be listening to Callum's hot takes about Titanfall 2.
Good.
So why don't we start with the actual question? So yes, what is the difference? Would you think between Western and Eastern mechs? Is it just mech versus mecha, or what really is the in your opinion is the actual difference?
I would say that the difference is primarily in design. I think that Western mechs tend to have kind of more of like a uniform is the wrong word, but they're clearly designed for fighting, you know? Whereas with Eastern mechs, it does feel like they get into the weirder designs a bit more. Because let me blow your mind real quick and ask you a question. Is Power Rangers Eastern or Western?
Okay.
Well, it's absolutely 100% Eastern, but I want to hear you provide a case for why it's Western.
No, I agree with you. I think that there are some flourishes in Power Rangers that might be considered quote-unquote Western, but it definitely follows the trope, and conventions of an Eastern sort of mech philosophy.
Well, that and also because it's a Japanese show that got brought to America, and it's based on other Japanese shows of a similar type, like Kamen Raiders and stuff.
Okay, Mr. Japanese show, but what about, is Transformers Western or Eastern mech?
I would say it's Eastern.
Really?
Because I haven't looked this up, but where was Transformers made? Because the show was entirely made to sell the toys, right?
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, it was produced by it was ordered by Hasbro, basically. But I'm pretty sure that Transformers is a Western style of mech.
I think it was based on Eastern, though.
Well, certainly maybe the initial idea of Transformers robots in disguise. But, Callum, let me ask you this. When in a Japanese show have you ever seen a big rig?
I mean, I'm trying to think now. This is the problem with these kinds of questions, is that like I don't have a working encyclopedia of all the Japanese shows I've ever seen. And I've definitely seen a big rig in a Japanese show.
I think I was being a bit facetious, but I really think that in terms of Transformers, there is a little bit of a distinction to be made. Because Optimus Prime is basically Space Jesus. And...
No, go on. Tell me why Optimus Prime is Space Jesus, please.
Well,
isn't that Goku?
Well, no. Goku is... I mean, Goku is not necessarily a messianic figure in the same way that Optimus Prime is.
He literally is, because he's like a... He becomes a god at one point.
Yeah, but Goku is... I think in a lot of ways, Goku is the representation of the realization of the self. That the man can become a god. Not that he was always divine. Whereas Optimus was always essentially associated with sort of the divinity of, things like the Allspark and the foundational lore of the Transformers, and like the juxtaposition between Optimus and Megatron as like, Satan and Jesus, with, the clash between them as a primordial sense of like good and evil.
Wow, we're really getting into... Like, this is some... catch us next week with our Ninjago hot takes.
Yeah, Ninjago hot takes, where we spend the entire episode talking about Scooby-Doo.
Oh man, I really want to have a Bionicles episode.
If you guys would love to see a Bionicles episode, let us know, because I actually had Bionicles
Fucking
growing
better,
up.
because I watched those movies like they were the Bible. I love them.
I played the video games.
I never had the video games. I think I rented one once.
So back to actual Titanfall.
Yeah,
so
the topic. Let's go.
Yes. So I do think you touched on something that was correct in terms of, like, yes, there are differences between Western and Eastern mechs. If you just look at two different mech properties, say Battletech and Gundam Wing, that is what it's called, right? Or is it Gundam Zero?
Sure.
Sure.
One, there's a
Gundam
billion
and
Gundam
and you,
series
and you
out
look
there.
at the two different mechs that are in. They both look very different, right? From what I can tell, really, I do think it is a design thing. In some respects, Western mechs don't look like people. You can tell that it's probably going to be an Eastern mech, or following the Eastern mech philosophy, if the mech looks like a human being, if they carry guns that are like mech-sized, but are still like rifles and things like that. Whereas in the West, the mechs are actually best thought of as like walking tanks, right? A tank doesn't look like an organic thing. It just looks like a box, with some bits sticking out of it.
You know what's weird is, now that you've mentioned guns, I was watching a series called Gunbuster in preparation for this. It's a really good series, but and one of the storyboarders was Anno, who you might know from Evangelion.
I don't.
He literally made it. Anyway, he was a storyboarder on Gunbuster. I don't think a single mech in Gunbuster actually used a gun.
Huh. Well, I mean, it is called Gunbuster, so...
Well, that was the name of the, like, big mech that they use at the end. But, the thing is, like, most of them... I might be misremembering it, but from what I can remember, all of them used, like, axes and stuff. And, like, batons.
Oh, yeah, that's another thing. In Eastern mech shows or games, melee combat is a real important aspect. Like, as much as a Gundam is meant to be a super powerful fighting rig, for some reason, a lot of them have like swords and energy shields and things like that.
I forget what the series is, but my first time watching a Gundam show, I remember two things. One, a laser that made people explode, but not like explode regularly. I mean, it made them like inflate and then pop. And two was a mech running out of bullets. So it like the pilot like pressed a button and the mech like pulled a knife out of its leg. Like a combat knife. Like, why the fuck would you put that on a robot? Just punch them.
How would you even make a combat knife at that kind of scale? I'm just thinking like forged in fire, but like making knives for mecha.
But also, why would you put like a grip on it? Other than to show us that it's a knife. Because robot hands don't get sweaty.
Exactly. I think that really there is a bit of a ulterior motive here in terms of the design. Because design is not just, I'm making a thing to look a certain way. I'm also making it because I'm trying to maybe fulfill some certain kind of element or thematic, content. If the mechs in Western mech design look like tanks, it's actually not. It's because they are treated like tanks. That the mech is operated by a crew of soldiers. They have like sensors and scanning bulbs and all kinds of other things and countermeasures, and they are treated like a tank and used like a tank. Whereas in Eastern design, typically, the mech is piloted by one person. It's a soldier, really. It's a representation of that soldier and their power. And it's really individualistic in a lot of ways. That's not to say that you can't have mechs in Western traditions that are piloted by a single person or treated a little bit more individually. But it seems to be that the focus is a lot less on the individual and their fighting spirit and a lot more on, combined arm tactics.
Ooh, I would disagree there.
Okay,
because
sure.
if we take examples like at the end of Avatar, when I'm the James Cameron's Avatar, when the
I was just about to say, where are there mechs?
There are mechs in Korra in the Legend of Korra, but anyway, at the ending of James Cameron's Avatar, the big sergeant guy is in one of those mechs, and if you look at that and also the Matrix, and Ripley from Alien. It does feel very like individualistic, kind of.
Yeah,
you
but it
have
is
to
a-
be
yeah,
a
but it is
big,
a-
strong soldier to like, just a general badass to like pilot this.
But counterpoint, even in James Cameron's Avatar, that's going to be cumbersome to say.
Just say Avatar. No, not that one.
Quaritch, I think that's his name, that sergeant guy.
Oh,
That mech is completely
of a
disposable to him. Yeah, I think his name is Miles Quaritch or something like that.
That's
But
crazy. No, wait. Oh yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Jack Sully.
Yeah.
I was about to say, isn't that the main character's name? But his name is Jack Sully, and
it's Jake Sully.
yeah, because the alien lady keeps calling him Jake Sully,
Yeah.
which is weird because she didn't fucking see that name written. She heard
Yeah,
him pronounce it. And I
Yeah,
complained
so how
about that to people, and then they just shot back at me with like, "Have you ever heard white people pronounce African names?"
Yeah, but generally, anyway, that's a topic for another day. But Quaritch doesn't treat his mecha as like his individual, like, oh, this is my mech suit. He just jumps into the first thing that he sees. It's very disposable in that kind of way. And even when he wants to fight, he actually, would treat it as more of a tool.
Yeah.
But in a lot of Eastern mech shows, the mech is an extension of the pilot. This is his custom mech. He only has this one, or like, yeah, it's not meant to be disposable. Like even when Quaritch, the mech, loses cabin pressure, he just puts on a mask. He doesn't actually care about it. It's a machine to
let
him.
me throw two other examples at you: Pacific Rim, and what's that one with? I think it's Jared Butler, where they enter a robot like boxing or something.
Robot boxing. I think you're thinking of the movie. Was it the movie version of like the Rock'em Sock'em Robots?
Yeah, definitely. It was like the movie. It was like Rocky.
That was not.
but like
I don't
with
think
robots.
that was Jared Butler. I'm pretty sure that was Hugh Jackman.
No, I don't. It wasn't Hugh Jackman. I would have remembered Hugh Jackman. Also, Chappie. What about Chappie?
Okay, now we're going way off script there because
Is Chappie a mecha movie? Because it's about robots.
It's a robot movie. It's a robot movie, and
Okay, wait.
Callum,
Let's define the example by like what is a mecha movie versus a robot movie.
Yeah, okay, because mechs have to be piloted, right? They might even some mechs might have like an AI controlling them, but generally speaking, the assumption is that the mech is meant to be piloted. And viewers at home, for the record, I just googled it. The movie that Callum is thinking of is called Real Steel, and it does in fact have Hugh Jackman in it.
Oh my god!
Boxing
No,
movie.
what?
Yes.
Why is he? What's he doing to his career? Anyway, that was not a great movie. So the stipulation here is that if there's no pilot, it's a robot movie, not a mech movie, which means that like
Yes.
the Iron Giant robot movie,
Yes. Not a mech
Pacific Rim mech movie,
mech movie.
technically kaiju movie, but mech movie in this instance. Now, what I was saying about Pacific Rim earlier is I've never seen Pacific Rim, but I do know that you have to like have a sync rate with your pilot, and I do think that the specific mech that they have is like special to them.
Well,
It's like when you
Pacific,
hear a person name the robot that they're piloting.
Pacific Rim, I think, is a little bit of an edge case because it is a movie that does have a lot of Eastern design influences, right? Kaiju, the idea of fighting kaiju with mecha is a very Eastern thing. However, there are some elements of it that are a little bit more Western, and I think the reason for that is because they wanted to ground the movie a little bit. Another point that I was going to get to is that if you look at the way that the mechs move in the environment, right, there's another clear distinction there. Because, for example, in a lot of Western mech movies or games or whatever, the mech are actually kind of slow and cumbersome.
Yeah, they're clunky.
They're very clunky, and in BattleTech, you can actually just knock those things over because they're not like super duper agile. But in Eastern mech shows, the mechs are all agile. They're capable of incredible speed and performance. So
there's a
Pacific Rim
specific
kind of
plot point in Code Geass where the new mech Lancelot, that like one of the main characters pilots, is so much more agile, and it's got a really like every other mech is kind of Western in that they're big and clunky and they carry guns, and this one has like wheels on its feet, and it's super skinny, and it's just so much faster than all the other ones, and it like decimates them for that reason. Even though if that thing tried to stand, it would immediately fall over.
Yeah.
So I think Eastern mechs tend to play a bit fast and loose with like rules. They go for the rule of cool rather than the rule of logic.
Well, I think it's really just maybe sometimes an adherence to maybe sort of quote-unquote realism. Obviously, mechs aren't practical in real life. Any mechanical engineer can tell you that the cost of trying to make an articulated leg far outweighs any of the benefits that you could ever have by having a mech.
Yeah, there's a tank will always be better than a mech purely by the fact that it's easier to make.
And easier to fix.
Yeah. That's the thing people don't like tell you, is that like someone has to fix these fucking things. You can't just invent them. You have to be able to repair them too.
Oh yeah, totally. You can't just take like a beating on like a mech and then go, okay, well, time to fix this thing. How do I do it? Like the leg is it's not as easy as repairing a track on a tank or stuff like that. But yeah, there is that, that element, I think, that adds that in a Western show, there is going to be some more attempts at realism. And granted, it's maybe a kind of fake realism, but you're not going to have the mechs jump around super fast, agile. They're going to be treated like tanks who can walk.
And that they're all the poorer for it.
I, as a person who generally likes low fantasy over high fantasy, I am much more fond of the Western philosophy of mech design than I am the Eastern.
You
that
and
possibly
I
could just be...
need to have a chat about what low and high fantasy mean, because I think you and I have different definitions.
Okay.
Yeah, let's get into that later. So here's the bullet points of what we're going to. Eastern mechs, I think, have a tendency to go for less realistic designs, like animals or weird shit, for the sake of like aesthetics, or so that they can do sort of cool action stuff. Whereas Western mechs go for a more logical, quote-unquote logical design, a more practical design, as it were, and tend to function a bit more like walking tanks.
Yeah. If the mech looks like it needs like if the mech basically looks like it can only ever be used in a very limited kind of capacity, then it's probably a lot more of a Western show. But there is I think maybe another aspect of it that I think is important, and that is basically taking it beyond design and use, but also thinking kind of about ideology, right? I mentioned earlier that a lot of mechs in Western shows kind of can be a little bit disposable, a little bit interchangeable, in the same way that like a tank is disposable, interchangeable,
Yeah, but in Japan, in like Eastern shows, they tend to have a bit more personality.
Yeah, and I think there's a reason for that, right? I think that to some extent there is this idea that mech fighting is a more honorable thing, and what you tend to see I've seen some mech shows is that it's much more often that it's going to be a one-on-one fight than it is going to be like several people attacking each other in a battlefield where everything is confusing and chaotic. Like
Gunbuster is very different. It's literally like aliens from space attacking Earth, and there's a ton of these robots attacking in like formation.
Okay, well, I mean, there are probably degrees of variance.
Well, it's like that also in Old Noah Zero, Code Geass. A bunch of anime shows do that. It depends rarely on who they're fighting in the war.
Yeah, there are some aspects I think that maybe blur the lines a little bit. Certainly, I don't think that Western and Eastern mech design happens in isolation. I think that both sides basically share ideas, and if a show becomes popular enough, I think it will have an influence. There definitely is an influence of BattleTech to some degree in Japan, and similarly there is an influence of Japanese mech shows, Gundam, etc. in the West.
Yeah.
But I do think it is interesting that for the most part you can think of about a lot of the mech shows as, here is an honorable guy, he's the hero, he's almost in a way like a samurai, right? Or Ronin, speaking of Ronin. And he's going to do a lot of duels with the main villain. And maybe there'll be battles going on in the background, but really the focus is these two warriors fighting each other. Whereas in a Western show, you might have a tank crew that gets annihilated by accident, or incidentally just by another bigger gun. And then you just move on. You just move on to the next character.
You know, you say that. Actually, I'm inclined to agree. Generally, it's about, like, one character who becomes the greatest mech pilot or whatever. But that's not to say that there aren't these big scale, like, this platoon was lost kind of episodes. I think it's...
Oh, yeah.
It's just in Western style, mechs are seen more as, like, just tools. And in Eastern, it's more like a craft. It's like an art. You know? It's like how some people see, like, sword fighting as just fighting, and other people see it as, like, a martial art.
Yeah. Like, in Game of Thrones, you have sword fights, but generally speaking, they aren't meant to last very long, and they usually don't go in the way that you expect them to. Whenever there's a big, quote-unquote, heroic moment, it tends not to end in the way that you think it would.
Yeah.
But I do want to actually talk more about Titanfall, because I think that we
probably should. We're about 25 minutes in, and we haven't started yet.
We've put down the picnic blanket and laid out a spread of different ideas, and I think now is the time to sort of bring it back to Titanfall. So,
what's your stance?
The first question is, I think that the first problem that we encounter is that Titanfall is not purely a mech game. Titanfall 2 has mechs that feature prominently. The mech that you pilot, BT-7472, is incredibly unusual, just in terms of the framework that I've put down for, Western mech design, because BT is not only a character, because the mech has their own AI, but very humanized, right? Something that would immediately stand out to you if you're just looking at this game is that a lot of the mechs are very humanoid, and they do follow that design convention in basically Eastern design by having them be kind of like big soldiers, where they are mechs that carry around guns. They don't really... I mean, some of them have, like, arm cannons and missiles and stuff like that. But for the most part, they carry the weapons that they fight with.
Yeah, which seems ridiculous, because then you not only have to build the mech, you have to build a giant gun.
And you have to somehow have the ammo for it as well.
Yeah, you have to construct giant bullets.
I mean, I guess, you see, here's where I think things become a little bit complicated. Because even though the mechs are very much, in terms of their design, Eastern in nature, at least they fit into the framework of Eastern mech design, they aren't used really like Eastern mechs are, right? With the exception of the player character, most of the characters that you fight don't really focus on their mechs. Their mechs aren't really all that important to them. The other characters' mechs don't have any personalities. Your character's mech does have a personality.
I would disagree with you there.
Oh?
Yeah, because if you look at characters like... Who's the first mini-boss who does the fire attacks?
Scorch.
Yeah, I fucking hate him. I'm not going to go into why. He's just a very annoying character. But he, like, added decals to his mech. You know? You run up against plenty of these mechs that, like, do this thing. And...
Yeah, but he is a boss.
Yes,
right?
True.
I mean, think about all the mechs that you have to fight him at the same time. Those mechs are completely disposable.
Exactly, except these specific people within the world of Titanfall have added designs to their mechs. And a lot of them look patchwork, like they've just attached a new thing to it. And there's plenty of reasons you can make for that, like maybe it's really expensive to get a brand new mech. But it seems like they've tried to give these mechs a bit more personality, which means that these people do care about their robots.
So here's where I have to dig a little bit into the lore. So from what I can tell, the mechs in Titanfall were originally developed not as fighting platforms, but rather they were developed as labor devices.
Aha,
right?
What an Eastern ideal.
Basically they were like tractors. And I think if you think about it in the way that they get used, they aren't actually really used in the way that you might think they would be used in a Western sense. They're actually used more like, do you know what a technical is?
No.
A technical. So a technical, have you ever seen like a Hilux Bucky with like a M4 machine gun on the back?
Oh,
right? You've
yeah.
probably seen that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So technicals are vehicles that are Yeah, technicals are vehicles that are civilian in origin, but added, they have weapons and they're used in a military role. Like
Okay, yeah, no, I
the
get you.
Toyota War, which is fought, between, I think it was in the Middle East, where there were like legions of people fighting each other with, uh, imported buckies with machine guns put on the back because they can't afford to build a tank.
That's
technicals.
that's pickup truck to you guys in America.
Yeah, actually, many of our audience are American, so pickup truck.
Yes.
But a technical is not intended to be a true replacement for actual armor, but they are meant to accomplish specific roles. So if you think about the way that mechs, Titanfall, the Titans are used in Titanfall, they really are, in a lot of cases, used by like special forces to do special forces things.
That is so
Like, you don't-
fucking wild. I mean, imagine if like SAS started making a whole division of people who exclusively rode tractors.
Yeah, yeah.
Or like the jet ski people.
Yeah, it is just kind of like the operator dude that rolling up on a jet ski, and like, because that's how they're used, right? The pilots for Titans are all special operatives, right? They all are super soldiers in some way. They're not meant to be regular grunts, not regular soldiers.
But here we get into the Eastern philosophy of it, and I have two things to raise here. Is that one, it is so clear, like from the opening intro onwards, opening intro as opposed to the closing intro, that the pilots of these mechs are like placed in positions of honor so far up above a regular soldier. So it is literally honorable duels between two honorable figures in two different armies, and two, there's a neural link between pilots and their mechs.
Yeah. There is a little bit of a ambiguity, I think, because it's not explicitly stated whether or not the mech is piloted like you would with controls, or if there's actually just a pure-on neural link. Because some of the mech cockpits do have more controls and joysticks and things like that, and some of them I don't really know if they do. Because, for example, if there was meant to be like a purely neural link kind of thing, then how is it that Cooper can step into BT7? He can step into BT
Registered as
even though
new pilot.
Yeah, but then like they just wipe away the previous link that quickly, and then they just establish a new one.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean,
maybe.
dude, that literally happens. I rarely recently played this, and it's just like assigning you Captain Latamosa's position. Congratulations on your promotion. We're establishing a neural link now. And the reason that like Cooper couldn't just get into a robot for like most of his life was they said you need to. Latamosa literally tells him you have to establish a neural link.
Yeah, I mean, it's again there's some ambiguity here because Cooper doesn't like some of the Titans are meant Titan pilots. The pilots are meant to be super soldiers and they're meant to have like certain abilities, but Cooper doesn't really seem to do that, or maybe he does. He like the injection that he gets at the beginning of the game. Maybe that's how he gets his super, piloting abilities. Apparently, it's there's a lore channel I think that was talking about how it's nanites that does that, nanomachines.
Well then, but they do establish a neural link, and that's why at the like spoilers by the way, near the end of the game when BT has the like thing in him, the like power source that's distorting time.
The Arc, I think.
That's it.
I think it's
what
called.
A dumb fucking name, man. These video games come up with the worst names for their super batteries. But anyway, when BT has the Arc in him, the South African villain, he has to threaten Cooper's life to get BT to open, which implies that he can't pilot BT, and that implies, and he does it without like hesitation. He doesn't say like, "Why hasn't anyone tried to get into this robot and open it?" He just says like he just does it. He just knows. So I think there's a general understanding that you need a neural link with your robot.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it really it could be that BT is a special thing. Because something that does show up often in Eastern mech design is the idea of the prototype, the super mech.
Yeah.
And I think it is established that BT is the first Vanguard class Titan.
He was the last Vanguard class Titan. but the Vanguard class Titan, they don't make them anymore.
Well,
he's
no,
like in
no.
the first category, but he's not the first one.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure from what I was reading that the BT one that you pilot is it was the first Vanguard class Titan, and the Vanguard class is a new Titan class as well. So maybe it is possible that the Vanguard class is just fundamentally more advanced than the others, because you don't really see other Titan mechs actually have a personality. Like, they don't talk to you in the way that BT does.
Okay, I may have
their
misunderstood
pilots always
that.
talk to you.
But also, it does make sense because one, BT. I only have 1 point. I don't know why I said one. BT can pick up other bits of Titan rigs and add them to himself, and you don't see any other Titan do that. So again, it's a very Eastern thing of like, my robot is the most special robot.
But is it because... But you see, the thing is, BT stands out even more as an exception because none of the other Titans really do that. It could just be that because none of the other Titans behave in that kind of way. They're all treated kind of very sort of in a fixed way, where you've got different squads of these Titans and they have different loadouts, and they don't change their loadouts like you can. And maybe it's the case that BT is meant to be an exception to the rule that Titans are these, generally speaking, niche applications. They're niche weapons.
Oh, dude, this is all anime. No, seriously, like, this is so close to Gurren Lagann. He finds a robot.
I'm sorry, what?
It's Tengen Toppa Gurren. It means heaven and earth Gurren Lagann, and it's
okay.
It's a mech anime. And the main character finds this really small robot that's shaped like a giant head. And it has an ability to, like, it drills into a bigger robot and becomes that robot's head and, like, supercharges that robot, making it so much stronger than it was before. And it's the only robot that can do this. And, of course, it's the main character's robot.
Yeah, well, I mean, your Cooper character is meant to be kind of exceptional in a way. But on the other hand, I would argue that the influence and the effects of the game aren't all that fundamentally special. Because, yes, you do go and do a lot, but you don't single-handedly take down the IMC by the end of the game.
I mean, you kind of single-handedly take down Apex.
You take down a mercenary company, right? That's what you do, essentially. If you think about the overall wider context of the war, you're doing a special operation. You're doing some spec ops stuff. You attack a critical enemy point, you win it, but you don't really do any large-scale battles. For the most part of the game, you are just moving very quickly to do special objectives and move on even faster.
Ooh, untrue. Well, okay, how do you define a large-scale battle?
Well, I mean, the large-scale battle would be like there are actual battle lines and not just one group of people rushing to attack another group of people. Like,
so the ending of the game wouldn't count as a large-scale battle when you're storming the place. Okay,
well, maybe the ending of the game, but the majority of the game, definitely not. I mean,
because
isn't it a story convention for things to kind of end off on a bang? But the majority of the game isn't that.
Yeah.
The majority of the game is you fighting through a facility against,
True.
much smaller numbers.
But then what about the fight with Viper?
Yeah, but the fight with Viper is... Yeah, but that's a good point.
Have you lost
the Viper fight?
Because
the Viper fight.
Yeah, in the Viper fight, there are a bunch of other pilots, but
they don't help you, do they?
They help you get to the control panel of the one ship, but then they're like, "Hey, you take care of the rest." They literally, you're the least qualified person among them, and they're like, "Hey, you go do this."
Yeah, that is true. I think the unusual thing about that final fight is that Viper somehow has helpers that you don't see beforehand. Like, other mechs show up to that fight to help him, and the other guys who are behind you are doing nothing.
Yeah.
While you're fighting Viper, mano y mano, except it's mano y mech.
Mecho y mecho.
That is actually the tangent. That is actually probably my favorite fight in the whole game.
I love that fight. Yeah, it's great visually. It's crazy. It's one of the toughest fights in the game. Like, I played the game on easy mode because this is my job and I don't have time to screw around testing my abilities. But it was the toughest fight, I think. Just because it's not easy to lock onto him.
Yeah, and also he's unusual in the sense that he's the only mech that can actually fly.
Yeah, it's cool. It's interesting. I love like jumping from plane to plane. That's always a big a trope that I love seeing in video games, and it does make your parkour abilities like a lot more viable and relevant to the situation, rather than just like, oh no, another floor collapsed. However, will you get through this, pilot?
Yeah, Titanfall has a strange relationship with sort of verticality, and the fact that you can parkour. I would argue that the ability to parkour in an FPS game is a step forward in terms of game design. But
here's the thing. Okay, let me talk to you about this. So everyone hates Mirror's Edge, right? Well, most people do.
I don't hate Mirror's Edge.
I don't either, but like a lot of people do because first person free running, like parkour in first person is difficult because it's
you can't see your feet.
You can't see your feet. It's tough because you don't know the dimensions of your character. It is tough to judge things like distance and whether or not you're going to be able to fit on a ledge. And yet,
you can't tell that.
Then Titanfall comes out, and it's just first person parkour, but because the game is not centered around the parkour is like. It's not like a side thing. It's what's the word I'm looking for? It's almost genre adjacent, you know? Where it's like not the main thing, but it's close to being the main thing. The main thing is the shooting, I would say. Because it's a first-person shooter. It's not a first-person parkourer with shooting. The parkour is just there to make the shooting a bit more interesting.
Yeah, it definitely is there for interesting level design. It's not meant to be a platformer or
so
almost a puzzle game.
I think that's the interesting thing here is that like you get a game like Mirror's Edge that tries this first person parkour gameplay out, and for a lot of people it doesn't really work, and for some people it really does, and then you make a slight tweak to it and it feels like a completely new thing that's awesome. And I can't help but feel that that's a good parallel to the Titanfall story, and the well, not the Titanfall story, but what we're talking about here today.
Yeah, I think just as a quick tangent in an episode that hasn't had enough tangents, I think it's really funny that Titanfall 2 and Dishonored 2 both had had a level that was built around time travel and going between back and forth two different timelines. Because I played Dishonored 2, and when I got to the time travel level in Dishonored 2, I was like, wait a minute, I've seen this before. And then I was like, and then I thought, oh no, did Titanfall or Dishonored steal? No, it turns out that they both at the same time, independently, because the games were released very close together. There's no way that they could have stolen one or the other. So it's like, they both had the same time travel idea.
Man,
for the levels, and it's really cool.
I have to be on such high alert in these videos, because Emilio will throw out a Dishonored spoiler just apropos of nothing, and sometimes they just catch me right on my side, and now I know that there's a time distortion level in Dishonored 2, which I haven't gotten to yet, so thanks for that one, bud.
I can't live life perpetually not spoiling Dishonored.
It's too hard. But no, man, that time travel level came out of fucking nowhere in Titanfall. It just like happened, and it was for one level.
Yeah. I guess the same for Dishonored, which is why the comparison between the two struck me even more. But I do think that.
But you see, it makes thematic sense in Dishonored, because a lot of Dishonored 2, especially if you play as Emily, has to deal with like Emily's past when she was a kid, and this bullshit happened for the first time. And now I can see her drawing parallels between her current experience and like what Corvo must have gone through to get her back the first time. But in Titanfall, it's just like, oh, sci-fi, time.
Well, I guess they want to do a time travel thing because the Ark is meant to be a alien technology piece. So, it's got to do weird science fiction-y things.
Yeah, but make it like gravity. It's like distorting gravity. That makes sense. If it's distorting time, did you guys get this from the fucking Forerunners? Like,
well, I think they wanted to do. Okay, so here's where my theory that they didn't crypt the design actually falls apart a little bit, because from a thematic sense, I agree with you that Dishonored's time travel episode mission level actually does have a lot of reason behind it. However, that isn't necessarily the same, because they could have replaced it with some other kind of weird anomaly, but they wanted to do something that was innovative in terms of the parkour system, because time traveling in parkour is really, really cool.
Oh, it like gameplay-wise, it's fun. Definitely.
So maybe they did. Maybe two people on the dev team were talking to each other, and they were like, "Hey, we're working on this time travel, level." And then the other guy's like, time travel. Tell me more." and then he went back to the office and it's like, "Yep, time travel. That'll be cool."
This is a totally original idea that I didn't steal from anyone. His phone is ringing, and it's the Titanfall guy.
Yeah, and then the Titanfall guy is like, "Hey, wait a minute! Your game has a time travel episode, and you flip between it at the push of a button. What is going on?"
Steve, how could you?
Yeah.
I shared this with you in confidence.
I mean, it's probably just the case that everyone was, everyone was just.
Also, didn't Titanfall come out after Dishonored 2?
I think the difference was...
It's weird that we're assuming the Titanfall people came up with it first.
According to what I remember, Titanfall was released in October of 2016. So Dishonored
2
was released 11th of November. Ooh, so maybe the Dishonored people stole. So maybe the Dishonored people actually...
Wait, that was our original point.
Well,
yeah,
no, you see, we were just talking about how...
Well, the original story... Man, this has been a long tangent, but the original story is that we said, the Dishonored people were talking to the Titanfall people, and I made the point that it's weird that we thought the Titanfall people came up with it first. But yeah, apparently they did.
Yeah. I guess, this is why I think maybe they didn't crib the idea. Because Titanfall, they just have this cool thing, but it's not really thematically all that relevant. But in Dishonored, it is totally relevant, and you have to use it in different ways. Because, in Titanfall, you're time traveling to parkour. In Dishonored, you're time traveling really to problem solve. You're using time travel to get around obstacles, but not really to parkour.
It's like the ghost-seeing power from The Witcher or Divinity, where it's like, you're doing this to get the extra dialogue you need to solve the puzzle.
Yeah.
But anyway,
okay,
so Titanfall,
let's get back to Titanfall mechs. So I think we are basically, we put out enough sandwiches on the picnic blanket to really, I think, more broadly come to some kind of conclusion.
To really just have a big marital row that makes all the other picnickers uncomfortable.
So yeah, I think... I'm going to admit, I think I was a little bit more convinced going into this that Titanfall was a lot more Western, just because I felt the mechs were, for the most part, depersonalized. The way that they're used is not really in the Eastern sort of design. And even though they are designed as like soldiers, in the Eastern way, they are more like technicals, which is more of a Western conception, because the mechs in Eastern mech shows aren't technicals. They're dedicated war-fighting machines. Yeah, I think maybe Titanfall leans more east than it does west.
Oh, that it definitely does. So like I was saying earlier, I wrote notes on when I started playing Titanfall. And my first 3 notes are, it has a very Pacific Rim style Bond with the Machine deal. It has an Honored Warrior motif, considering pilots as demigods. And the theme of the story is fighting to free oneself. And while you can make the point that fighting to free oneself is a very Western idea, because it's like a lot of media that has that, it feels very Americanized, because a lot of American media views America's birth and everything as like the ultimate fight for freedom.
Yeah, a very individualistic perspective.
Yeah, but this is like fighting to free yourself from the oppressive regime of a company. And I don't know, I feel like that's transferable. It doesn't, that kind of transcends culture. That's more like ideological, right?
We're all affected by the specter of capitalism.
That's why I'm going to the only place that it doesn't exist. Space!
Wrong. Bezos has been in space.
Ah, damn it. Man, Tim Curry's going to be real mad when he gets to space and he fucking meets Bezos and
yeah, when he lands on the
Virgin Airlines.
Richard Branson.
Yeah, that counts.
Yeah, when he lands on like Mars or the moon, and there's like an Amazon warehouse.
And fucking God Emperor Musk is there, tweeting with his wife.
Oh boy. Yeah, so I think I definitely started this episode with a little bit more of a preconception about what was going to happen, and I've been moved over, right? I've been
Nice.
I've been convinced that Titanfall is a little bit more of a Eastern game in terms of its influences. I do think it is interesting that it is an FPS game, right? Because we typically associate FPS with the West.
Well, you see, the thing is, Titanfall doesn't take place in a school.
That's a dark joke.
Yeah, sorry. Anyway, carrying on.
Yeah, it's interesting that it is an FPS game. Whereas when we think of mech games in the East, we think of games like fighting games or
Or like those
JRPGs.
like what's that?
Or-
Dynasty Warriors?
Yeah, Dynasty Warriors.
Like that
yeah,
that
games
kind
like
of style where it's like a bunch of people coming to attack you.
Yeah, and you fight them off with your laser sword, or it's interesting. I think that Titanfall has a very sort of combination of influences, and it has this veneer of maybe some of the Western aesthetics, Western ideas.
Although I will
but
say, for the most part, a lot of the fights you have with mechs are kind of at most 3-on-1 for most of the game. Very first fight you have is like 1-on-1.
Yeah, you're never really overwhelmed per se, because the game has to do this thing where you have to be on foot and also not on it. So anytime that you know that you're going to be in the mech, you know that you're going to have to deal with other mechs, but you never actually have to deal with a mech when you're on foot.
Yeah,
which is
weird, right?
You had to do that in the first game. There were options and ways that you could deal with enemy pilots and titans by titan jacking them, or
I remember seeing that in the trailer, but the first game doesn't have a story mode, so I don't care.
Yeah, that's unfortunate for it. But yeah, it is unusual that there is that element, and it combines. But we don't typically think of the FPS as a Japanese style of game. However, thinking about that has made me think of Fear, and how very anime-esque the first Fear game
And also Killer 7.
And Killer 7, yeah. Maybe we should do a Fear episode.
Let's not. I don't like... I know Fear isn't a great horror game, but I don't like any kind of horror game, thank you.
Let us know in the comments below, viewers, if you would like us to do a Fear episode.
If you do, I'm leaving this channel. I'm going to start my own channel called, like, Mightbox.
Mightbox. Or Bitmarks, maybe. Or, that could be another one.
It'll be like Lenin me in...
Are you trying to make a Trotsky joke?
No. I was making a Lenin joke.
Yeah, I don't want to get... I don't want this channel to be abrogated by Marxist-Leninists, so let's not go down that line of thinking. But
I'm trying to think of
I think...
I'm trying to think of like a Trotsky joke now. My best one would be Ice Picks. Ice Picks.
Okay, and so definitely Marxist-Leninist Twitter is going to be coming after us. Maybe, I don't know. They probably don't watch this. Those guys don't really play video games. They just are on Twitter a lot. Yeah. So yeah, I was maybe a little bit. I've been convinced. Callum, have any of my points maybe convinced you a little bit?
No.
No.
I was right. I started this video off right, and I was confirmed to be even more right. Because, like I said at the beginning, it's not purely Eastern or purely Western. It's more like it's deeply Eastern influenced with a couple of Western ideals.
It's kind of like Deus Ex.
Well, I guess so. It's like so for instance, a lot of the mechs feel very monochrome in this game, especially the good guy mechs. Like BT.
Yeah, they do have camo.
Yeah, BT has like camo, as if you would fucking see a robot going through a forest and not know it was a robot. But yeah, it just feels like it was designed by a military. Yeah, even though he gives you a thumbs up and he throws you in a lot of the levels, and he has a personality and you Neuralink with him and whatever, a lot of it does feel like you're piloting different kinds of tanks. He is a bit unwieldy.
They are quite clunky.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like you'd be able to do huge jump stunts.
Even Viper, the most acrobatic of all of the mechs, is still relatively, clunky and not as agile as you'd expect.
Yeah, he looks like a helicopter with legs.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of what a technical would be in this case. It would be a jury-rigged helicopter with a lot of guns.
But yeah, it does look like these mechs weren't really designed to be... They weren't designed with that Eastern ideal. They all have very practical designs. So I think there's...
Insofar as a mech can be practical.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of Western influence on the design, but there's a lot of Eastern influence on, like, the themes. Except for Ronin. That's an anime.
Yeah, it is very... It has a big sword.
And it attacks
and
with
you
shockwaves.
run around.
It has shockwave attacks.
Yeah, that is probably very anime. I mean, there is kind of maybe a spectrum where some of the mechs are more like walking tanks and some of them are less like walking tanks, but the design definitely vacillates a little bit. I will say this, that the Titanfall mech evolution has definitely been more towards, I think, more Western influence than Eastern influence.
Oh, definitely.
In terms of the way that the mechs... From Titanfall 1 to Titanfall 2, and maybe there'll be a Titanfall 3, I don't know.
Who can say?
Maybe we can speculate.
Oh, there is
not.
a Titanfall 3. It's called Apex Legends.
Oh boy, that's gonna get someone angry in the comments. I'm not good enough at video games to play a game like Apex Legends. I think I tried playing it once and I instantly just got killed and I had no idea what was going on.
The weird thing about Apex Legends is it can't run on my computer at all. But I can play it on my PlayStation, and it's pretty fun. I played with friends and stuff. Had no idea it was connected to Titanfall whatsoever. It really doesn't come up, as far as I know, in that game. Except, you know those robots that have the giant, like, emojis, basically, on their chests? Mm-hmm. You get to play as well.
A lot of the guns are the same.
Well, you get to play as one of those robots, and he's the best one. He doesn't have the best ability or anything, but he's the best character.
Callum, you're cutting out again. I think maybe we should wrap this episode up.
Yeah, we're about at time. So there you have it, folks. Yeah. We deciphered today fully, tangents and all. Somehow we got there that...
I was wrong.
That Emilio was wrong, for once. Titanfall is mostly Eastern, with some Western stuff thrown in, mostly in the design of the mechs.
And maybe just the overall gameplay style, because it's an FPS in the vein of more FPS games.
Yeah, and I didn't get to throw some good digs in at the game. But what would you like to see, just before we close off, what would you like to see in a potential Titanfall 3?
I would like to see more emphasis on cooperation between the Titan and the player without segmentation of the sort of environment. So in Titanfall 2, it's very much you're either on foot or you're in the Titan. I would like to see more of an emphasis of you can choose to blend your playstyle, where you can use the Titan in some areas and you can use on foot in other areas, and you're more required to, it's less segmented. It's less obvious that, oh, you're going to be in the Titan now, or oh, you're going to be on foot now. Yeah, that's what I would like to see.
The Titan sections do feel very much like set pieces.
It's a very upgraded turret battle.
Yeah. I would like to get a bit more of a visceral feel for the Titans. Like, because you only ever fight Titans and occasionally grunts, it never feels like a Titan is that good of a weapon. It's just like leveling the playing field rather than being It's this idea that all war games you have to play as the underdog, you know? To the point that Call of Duty has for years made it seem like you were the underdog, even though you have the entire American military behind you. It's weird. I think there's nothing wrong with playing as the better equipped side as long as you change the story a bit to reflect that. Like you say, okay, instead of war is bad, maybe the story is, am I doing morally reprehensible?
Yeah, I mean, you could probably make a game where the player character is in the IMC, and but I think that was really the subtext of some of the game in the some of the first game, that the IMC is bad. But I think you could make maybe a game where you're a mercenary and you're doing more ambiguous things, where it's like, oh yeah, I'm kind of maybe doing some war crimes.
Yeah,
against some people who don't have Titans.
You could do it like Haze. Haze, the first half of the game, you are like a mercenary, or you're part of a PMC.
You're the corporate guy.
Yeah, and then you switch over to the other side.
Guerrilla.
Although,
Haze was not a good game, but we could talk about Haze.
Do it better than Haze, because what they should have done in the second half is that you have to go into guerrilla warfare. But they were just like, oh, it's the same. You just have everyone has different jerseys now.
Ooh. Maybe it would be an interesting idea to have the player's Titan be their enemy.
Oh,
where in the first half of the game, you're building the rapport,
and you have to upgrade your Titan. throughout the whole
Yeah.
game, and then you have to fight your upgrades.
Yeah, and then I don't know, maybe the Titan gets hijacked, or maybe the Titan was secretly evil all along, and then you spend the rest of the game having to deal with it. Having to deal with this really powerful, really jacked up Titan that you spent all this time developing, right? And then maybe it could be a little bit more like a survival game where you can't maybe fight the Titan directly, or you have to be really clever to fight it. Or something like that. That could be a cool idea.
That would be great.
Respawn, hire us to be storyboarders on Titanfall 3.
That's the same thing. Hire us to be writers. Storyboarders do the drawing of planets.
Oops. Oops, definitely not doing that work.
Anyway, Emilio has been wrong a lot today. Tweet about that to us at BiteMarksCast.
Make fun of me in the comments.
Yeah, and if you'd like to
ahead.
see more of Emilio being wrong, go and check out our Patreon and subscribe to us. And if that's too much commitment for you, and I get it, don't worry, you could buy us a coffee. Just remember that every time we get some money for this channel, it becomes more and more worth it to do these videos.
Yes, that is true. We are currently at 700 plus subscribers. We would like to get to 1,000 before the end of the year. So if you like our videos, please share them around. We would like to give a special patron thanks. You will be seeing the patrons flash by right now. We would like to specially thank Liam Anderson, Ilias Dope, and Forrest. You guys especially help us keep making this crazy show.
Thank you so much. It's so much fun to do this kind of work, and we really appreciate the support. Also, don't worry, we did hit 700 subscribers recently, and we've got some special episodes that we've got planned. They're just kind of in the works at the moment.
Yeah, we said we were going to do a 500 subscriber special. Now we're at 700 subscribers, which, can't believe that. But we do have a special thing that we're going to do. It just is taking a while to do it, but we hope it'll be worth it when it gets there.
Oh, it will. So thank you very much for watching, and man, just have a good Emilio is wrong day.
Bye, everyone.
So long.